The analysis Anne has done so far has uncovered some red flags, and correlations are starting to emerge. Nevertheless, before making an assessment, she needs to look at broader contextual factors that help to explain why the situation is the way it is, so that she can make targeted recommendations. Once Anne has formulated her recommendations, it is important for her to persuade decision makers to act on them. Presenting a 100-page report full of statistics will probably have a pretty limited audience. But what if Anne uses the data from her research to produce a short graphic summary with some key facts and figures? That might do the trick. The chapters in the fourth part offer guidance on drawing conclusions and making recommendations. They also discuss the importance of using findings creatively in advocacy efforts.
So data, right, as we define data, are discrete pieces of information, and they're often things, when we say data, what we're talking about is pieces of information that can be put into different categories and that we can organize easily. But for people working on human rights work, anybody that's working on any sort of social justice or social change advocacy, what's important about data is when it becomes evidence. So what you are wanting your data to do is to prove facts.
So data visualization is extremely important when presenting data. There's been recent research that shows that using a visualization, even a basic one like a graph, is much more effective in persuading and in presenting a message than presenting data in a table, for example. So being able to visualize data is really important in getting the message across and showing really why numbers are revealing something about a human rights issue. One of the important things, though, is that it's also easy to do it wrong. So certain kinds of visualization, for example, are appropriate for certain kinds of data, and some kinds of visualization are not appropriate for certain kinds of data. So it's important, again, to access expertise and help if needed, but to really try to find ways to use visualization in order to get the message across. Some of the characteristics of effective data visualization are, first of all, I would say accuracy and precision and just being truthful to the data. And that includes both showing what we know, but also showing uncertainties. But the main thing is really telling a story. So taking the data, analyzing it appropriately, and then telling a story with the visualization so that the viewer really gets why this data is showing a human rights issue, maybe a human rights violation or a problem with fulfillment or an inequality issue. And you really can, using visualization, show that immediately. And you can show more information often in a visualization than you can in text. So it's a very effective storytelling technique if used right.
You have to understand how people are going to interpret your data visualization, and you have to be thinking very clearly about how is the data visualization going to be perceived. So a really effective data visualization knows its audience. And I think the other thing that an effective data visualization is it's something that it's showing the least amount of data to make the point. Data visualizations, the simpler they are, the better for most of your audiences.
I think when we use the graphic is more important, most helpful for us how to read the situation. For example, if we just describe as information in our report, some people boring to read it. So maybe graphic will, when people saw our report related to the graphic, and they feel that it's more helpful and also more useful for them.
So one of the things that I've been hearing a lot recently is let's end the 90-page or the 900-page report that's full of statistics. That in a way is a bit of a misnomer. In some ways, you do want those reports, you do need all that data, but it's when you want to communicate that data to audiences that are not going to sit through or sift through a 90-page report, that's where the visualizations become very, very important.
NHRIs actually face a lot of difficulties in getting their recommendations acted upon. I think one of the ways that we can actually get around this is to ensure that there is partnership, collaboration with the government institutions.
I think one of the issues that we all should do is to follow up with the relevant authorities and see what, when we put the recommendation, whether they really look at it or not. And then keep pushing and keep reminding our leadership to act on that. Otherwise, we will publish a report and then we leave it on the shelf and nobody will act upon it. It will be in the media for 2 to 3 days and then we will forget about it.
Usually when we do an assessment, we produce a report, and the report would have all the recommendations in it. And in order to make the recommendations implemented, we use several techniques, like first of all, we have stakeholder discussions with them, and then we ask them about the timelines that they can fulfill, and they give their own timelines. For example, they might say within a month or within 2 years they might be able to accomplish. So these we monitor, but then we also tell them that we would be publicizing this.
So the media attention is also important, because the media attend the press conference and then they take up the issues. Of course, we have different television and they pick up the issues that they are more interested in. But the good part is the information goes to the public.
Our Human Rights Act indicates clearly that once we carry out the investigation and if we find that there need for changes in policy, we make recommendation to the necessary government agencies. And if they believe us and they alter the existing policy, then that's fine. But if not, then we send the complaint to the Senate and the Prime Minister.
Well, the first thing we did was to actually report to the affected people. So we did that with them, and then we took it around different parts of the government, both at ministerial level and CE level, with the recommendations that were specific for them. Then we also took it to the other political parties and talked through, in particular, the right to housing, because we'd learnt a lot about the right to housing. One of the most important things in terms of getting recommendations listened to in our case was a lot of explaining. It wasn't sort of drop the recommendation and run. We had to keep talking about what we meant, even when people would say, no, that's complete rubbish, and take every opportunity, whether it's in a slightly related select committee hearing or a meeting with ministers or officials, to just keep pounding away. I mean, it will take a while before all of the indicia, for example, of the right to housing are part of the debate, but we're getting there.